Okay, we are streaming now. Right, so let me just get back. Let me share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen. So once again, good morning and welcome to everyone who showed up on this Saturday morning. Thank you for that. Now, I know that in the 4 months of the lockdown, there have been a lot of webinars. I personally have done maybe 12 or 15 webinars myself over the last 3 to 4 months. And to some extent, there is actually webinar fatigue. And so maybe people are asking themselves, oh my God, another webinar? But still, some of you have signed up, some of you have shown up. I'm very grateful for that. It's an important topic that we are going to discuss today. So let me get into it. Before we start, I just want to set some guidelines for everyone. The first is that I know many people here have come in with who are senior leaders in your respective organizations. And many of you may have come in wearing your organizational hat. And there will be time for us to discuss the organizational implications of what I'm going to talk about today. But to begin with, I would like the focus to be you and not your work. So I request everyone to, please take off your organizational hat, your designation, chairman, CEO, senior vice president, MD, etc., and just participate in this as an individual. I think you will get more out of it if you do that. The second is that at the bottom of your screen, you will see a button called Q&A. And so my request is that if you have any questions that come up during the session, please capture them in the Q&A box only, because there are likely to be lots of questions. I want to make sure that I go through all of them. But if they are scattered between the chat box and the Q&A box, it's a little bit hard for me. So my request is please use the Q&A button to send questions. And please use the chat box to make any comments that you have. So any insights or any ahas or any observations, please capture them in the chat box and not in the Q&A box. So request you to be a little bit disciplined about the use of these two functions. The next point I want is that webinars tend to be very one way, and I'm trying to find innovative ways to engage all of you and keep you engaged and not let you fall asleep during this webinar. So we are going to try out some cool new apps, and please bear with us while I toggle back and forth and share screen, stop sharing screen. Bear with me. What I would like you to do is I would like you to put this particular URL, which is on your screen now, www.polev.com/VijayBhatt611. Can you please put this into a new tab on your browser? And I will explain why we need to do this. We are going to, as I said, try out some new and different things. So it's quite important that all of you copy and put this into the browser. When the time comes, I will stop sharing for a minute and I will open up the chat, and I will also put the same thing into the chat. But this may be easier for you to read and copy and put into your browser. So please do that now, if you don't mind. We are doing this on the internet. We are using a pretty robust platform. All of you are now familiar with Zoom, but we can have some call drops and we may have some tech glitches, in which case my request to you is please be patient. We will do our best to come back. Today, I don't have much IT support, so I'm going to try and do it all myself. So I request your patience and forbearance. Okay, so with these guidelines in mind, let's go. So what I'd like you to do is to go to the link that I've just asked you to go to. So that link for those of you who may have just joined in, that link is www.polf.com/Vijay 611. So I'm going to stop sharing. I am going to put that into the chat. Unfortunately, Sumit, Zoom does not allow active links in the chat anymore. So you will have to cut, copy, and paste polf.com/Vijay 611. So you can copy and paste this link from the chat box, but they don't let you put in a live link anymore. So what will happen is that you will actually go to a page which looks like this, and I'm going to share my screen again so you can see the page that I'm talking about. So you will see a page like this, and before you start typing in, just wait for a second. Let me tell you what you have to do. Basically, I would like everyone to think back over the last 4 months since we've had the lockdown. And I'm trying to find what might be your dominant emotion during this lockdown. And I want you to put in one word only and hit submit. And then you can actually put in your second reply and hit submit. And similarly, you can do that for 3 replies. So let's see what the group has been feeling, the dominant emotion during the COVID lockdown. And as I said, each one of you has 3 responses to give. I'm hoping that you can also see my screen so you can actually see what everyone is saying. Interesting. So there is positive, there is anxious, there is helplessness, there is paranoid. Obviously, look at the big ones, because the big ones mean that many of you are saying this. The more number of people who use a particular emotion, the bigger it is on your screen. But also, as you're doing it, look at what's coming up at the edges. I always find that fascinating. Overwhelmed, isolation, paranoid, insecure, exhausted. Keep going. We'll run this for maybe another minute. Let me make sure that everyone has the link. Some of you have just joined in, so I'm just going to sending the link again. I hope everyone can see it now. Amazing. So just to remind people who have just joined, if you go to the link in the chat box, you'll have to copy and paste it. And then you have the chance to actually put in what has been your dominant emotion during the COVID lockdown. And I'm requesting you for this particular app to put in one word only and hit submit. And you can do that 3 times. So thank you for that. Um, I am going to, okay, maybe I'll just give another 30 seconds because some of you may have just started. Fascinating, fascinating indeed. So I'm going to lock the screen now, and we will do another one very shortly. So bear with me, please. So if this was your dominant emotion during the lockdown, it's always fascinating for me to see that it'll be a combination of negative emotions like anxiety, uncertainty, helplessness, overwhelm, frustration, exhaustion, etc. But there will also be the positive side of it: positive, calm, present, hopeful, reflective, aware, gratitude, encouraged, futuristic, support, all of those kinds of things. And it shows me that all of us, all human beings at a time like this, have to co-hold the positive side and the negative side. And so it's not all negative, it's not all positive. And this tension between the positive and the negative actually creates quite a lot of stress. So I'm going to lock this particular screen, but please stay on this link because I'm going to take you to the next question. And the next question is this. If you were to again now think about now the future, we are transitioning out of the lockdown into the future, what would you say are the upsides or the silver linings of the new normal? So please stay on the link. And again, what you have to do is type in one word responses, and you can have 3 responses. So let's go. What have been or what do you see are the upsides or the silver linings of the new normal? Somebody has said you're feeling optimistic. Great. What are you feeling optimistic about? Wonderful. Keep going. So family, environment, time, opportunities, togetherness, healthier, sustainability, restart, environment, relationships, creativity, balance, togetherness, reflection, gratitude, basics. Again, look at what's on the periphery, look at what's on the edges. Appreciation, love, fresh, aware, adaptability, caution. introspections, supply, work, survival. So this is great. Right now we have about 65 participants on this in this webinar, and this is a very interesting picture that is emerging. Another 10-15 seconds and I'm going to lock the screen and actually get into the content. Okay, so I'm going to lock the screen now. So we have a sense of what has been our dominant emotion, which is here. And we also have a sense of what are we seeing as the silver lining, which is here. Great. Let me go back to my PowerPoint now. We've done this already. Okay, so I want to set the context for the actual content by simply clarifying some definitions, because many of us attach different meanings to some of the key words that we are going to use. The first word is stress. And I'm sure that if there are whatever number of participants today, each one of us will have a different definition of stress. So let me try and define what I mean by stress for the purpose of this webinar and going forward. So my definition of stress is the loss of equilibrium that one experiences when the pressures imposed upon us exceed our coping resources. So it's a simple equation. If the pressures imposed are higher than my coping resources, I feel stressed. If the pressures imposed are lower than my coping resources, then I feel okay. And this loss of equilibrium that we experience because of this pressures and coping resources equation or seesaw is what we describe as stress. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is that stress is extremely personal and subjective. In other words, one person's level of stress is determined by their coping resources and their level of pressure, which are going to be very different from another person's level of stress based upon their pressures and their coping resources. And this is part of the reason why stress is not a subject that is easily understood, even though it is universally experienced, because we don't have a common language for it. We can't exactly describe the extent to which we are feeling stressed. And this has led us to a very strange kind of a situation today. Now, there is a lot of research that has been done into this subject, and I want to share just a few of the what I call scary stats in terms of the impact of stress on us, particularly in the business world and in the corporate world. So here we go. It is estimated that about $1 trillion, $1,000 billion is lost per annum, per year, simply in terms of productivity loss globally due to mental health issues. This is an enormous number. As you know, India's entire GDP is about $3 trillion. So you can imagine the size and scale of the impact. Looking at India, about 46% of the Indian workforce suffers from some form of stress. This has been well tested and well researched. Even more serious, we have a lot of senior people on this call today. 100% of Indian CEOs suffer at least one stress-related ailment, and 69% suffer two or more. 70% of Indian CEOs take regular medication for that stress-related ailment. This is a very, very serious issue and a very serious number. If you look at employees in general, 56% of corporate employees say that they sleep less than 6 hours a day due to high stress. This is again a very scary number, because poor sleep is one of the first and most serious signs of stress. There are other signs as well, which I'm putting up on the screen: low concentration, poor digestion, headaches, hypertension, emotional reactivity, all of those kinds of things. So this is a real factor for us to take into account. And I'm going to stick my neck out and say that most corporates, whether it's in India or overseas, barring the really well-established and progressive multinationals, don't do enough in this area. They should. But is it only scary stats? Is it only the negatives? Well, not really. There are some happy stats as well, and let me share some of them with you here. What we know is that companies are taking small steps in this space. As I said before, 30% provide medical checks, 22% provide health-related talks, 20% provide healthy food and fruit in their cafeterias, and so on. But even here, we can see from the numbers that 70% don't provide medical checks, 78% don't provide health-related talks, and so on. So therefore, there is a real gap that we really need to address and take up quite seriously. But here's the happy stats, the positive news, that when companies take this up seriously, this is what happens. Companies have as much as 27% reduced absenteeism, 26% lower medical cost, 14% higher productivity, 32% better employee retention, and 82% impact on corporate reputation. I can see that somebody has raised their hand. My request to you, Swarupa, is please put in, if you have a comment, please put it in the chat box. And if you have a question, please put it into the Q&A section. Thank you. I will answer all the questions a little bit later. Thank you. This is one of my favorite stats, which says that every dollar spent in treating mental health returns $4 in productivity. This is a very powerful statistic, because what it tells us is that there is a tremendously high ROI. I mean, if you think about the stock market, I don't think there is a single company stock that can give you this kind of an ROI. But investing in the mental health of your employees can give that to you. What we perhaps lose sight of when we think about stress and burnout, etc., is that it's not just the organizational impact. There is an enormous social impact or cultural impact. And I call it the 5 deadly Ds. And I'm going to tell you what are these 5 deadly Ds. None of them are going to come to you as a surprise, but I think you will realize that actually stress has a very key role to play in each of these 5 deadly Ds. So let me start. The first one, and you may be surprised by this, is drinking, alcohol consumption. It is well known all over the world and also in India that alcohol consumption is on the rise, on a steady rise. It's rising rapidly. It's rising fastest among women. It's rising fastest among youngsters. The concept of binge drinking, etc., is growing rapidly. And this is having a huge social cost on us as a society. The second deadly D is depression. And right now in the COVID situation, depression is talked about a lot, but it has been there for a while and it will be there forever, actually, as long as human beings exist. And stress is a major contributor to depression, and depression is a major contributor to stress. So also look at the cause and effect relationships between each of these 5 deadly Ds and stress. The third one is divorce. So we all know again that divorce rates are spiraling all over the world, also in India. And again, you can see the relationship. Does stress lead to divorce or divorce lead to stress, or are both true? Keep this in mind. The fourth one is debt. We know again that debt levels are rising around the world, not only corporate debt, but here I'm talking about personal and individual debt, talking about credit card debt. I'm talking about EMIs on homes and cars and vacations and all these kinds of things. And then when the economy comes to a grinding halt, this debt that we have created for ourselves comes back to bite us. And the last D is also a very serious one, perhaps the most serious one, which is disease. And we know from science that there is a clear relationship between stress, immunity, and illness. It's called the science of psychoneuroimmunology. So I just want you to take a step back and see that stress has an individual impact. Stress has an organizational impact in terms of productivity, engagement, motivation, etc. And stress also has a social and a cultural impact. And therefore, it's a really urgent and important thing for us to take some concrete actions in the dimension of stress. We also know that stress is multidimensional, that it's not a single thing. You can experience stress at a physical level, and that is due to our lifestyle habits. At an emotional level, and that's got to do with our feelings. At a mental level, and that's got to do with our thoughts, the kind of thoughts we have. Are they enabling thoughts or disabling thoughts? Stress can be experienced, and we know this, at the level of relationships, whether our relationships are healthy or toxic, both at home and at work, in the social sphere. And this may come to you as a surprise, but you can also experience stress at the spiritual level. Now, at the spiritual level, I'm not talking about the conventional notions of God and religion and so on. I'm leaving that out. I'm simply talking about the existential questions that don't get answered. Many of us used to face them only when we hit our midlife. It was called the midlife crisis. But now, interestingly, it is also a millennial crisis, because the millennials at a very young age are asking themselves these tough questions. Who am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? What is the legacy I want to leave behind? What is the meaning of life? And so on and so on and so on. Now, part of the problem, even if you accept that stress is multidimensional, is that there is no way to diagnose stress. And if you ask somebody, they will not be able to tell you the extent of their stress or the source of their stress so very easily. So for this reason, what we have done is that we have created a holistic health questionnaire. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to put this in the chat for a minute. So please bear with me while I do that. Anyone who wants to take this free stress diagnostic, you can please copy this link, and after the session is over, or maybe over the weekend, you can go away and actually take this questionnaire. It's a 30-minute questionnaire only, and you will get your immediate personal report at the end of taking that particular questionnaire. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. Please bear with me. Yeah, here we go. Oops, something's happened. Just give me a second, please. Yeah, let me try again. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, we've been through all this, so I don't know why we've gone back. Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah, let's talk a little bit now about burnout, which is in a way an extreme or chronic form of stress. Burnout is defined now by the World Health Organization like this, which is emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion leading to excessive and prolonged stress, feeling overwhelmed and drained of energy. And so in the past, we used to think of burnout as, as the visual shows, burning the candle at both ends. But now it seems to be much more work related and not just lifestyle related. So in fact, in May of 2019 or June, I think, May or June, I don't remember, the World Health Organization has classified burnout as an occupational syndrome. And they describe the burnout phenomenon as having three specific characteristics. The first is depleted energy. The second is distance, negativity, or cynicism about the job. That means I don't feel connected. I don't feel positive. I just feel as if it's a mechanical kind of a thing that I'm doing. And as a result of my depleted energy and my attitude to it, my professional efficacy is significantly reduced. We have seen the stats before. I've shared the stats with you. But a new stat which came up recently, which really shocked me, was this one, where in one survey, 7 out of 10 professionals felt that they are at the risk of burnout after the pandemic. So it means that as we go forward, if the lockdown wasn't bad enough, coming out of the lockdown is going to be perhaps even harder. And therefore, again, organizations and leaders have to really, really, really take this seriously as we come out of the lockdown. And frankly, as I said before, I don't think people know very much about what to do and how to do it. And people are kind of throwing up their hands and saying, we'll do the best we can. But given the price that we have to pay individually, organizationally, and socially, I don't think that's good enough. And that brings me, so we've talked about stress, we've talked about resilience, and in a way, this is going to be the body of what we are going to talk about today. So with resilience, I want to tell you the story. Some of you may have heard me tell this story before. It's the story of the oak and the reed. You may remember this story too, that, on the riverside, there was this huge and magnificent, strong, powerful oak tree. It was a giant oak tree. It provided shade, and it was really strong and powerful. But it was also proud. It was also a little bit arrogant. And just near the riverside, there were also these humble reeds, which you can see on the right side of your screen. Very small, very soft, and nowhere near being as big and strong and powerful as the oak tree. But here is the interesting thing, that when the big storm came and there was thunder and lightning and rain and wind and so on, the oak tree was toppled, whereas the humble reed survived. And so when you think about these two mindsets, I guess resilience consists of making sure that while we are strong on one hand, we also know how to be humble and to be flexible on the other hand, like the reed. So how is it that we can cultivate these qualities of strength, flexibility, and humility? That in a way is a nutshell of what resilience means. So resilience, as I said, has three components or three levels. The first one is the strength part of it. Do we have the endurance to withstand the shock? So if you think about COVID, or if you think about the lockdown, or if you think about now going back into the new normal, there is a shock. Do we have the endurance to withstand it? So that is one part of resilience. The second part of resilience is the recovery aspect. How quickly do we bounce back from that shock? That is recovery. And most people think about resilience only in this dimension, but it's only one out of three dimensions. And the third which most people neglect, and certainly for me and in my work, it's very important, is the idea of transformation, which is also inbuilt into resilience, which is having withstood the shock, having bounced back, how and to what extent are we going to grow from the experience? So when you understand resilience, not only from the perspective of one, but from all three perspectives, you see that it's important to take a holistic view of resilience as well. Now, like stress, like burnout, resilience also is personal and subjective. So as a society, we don't really have the right norms or the right language or the right tools to deal with any of these kind of things, which is why it's going to be a challenge and a struggle as we go forward. Fortunately, there is some good research into the subject of resilience, which I'm going to share with you. And I'm also going to give you the chance to actually take a little quiz to maybe assess your own resilience levels. So what are the building blocks of resilience? We talked about the three levels: endurance, recovery, and transformation. But what are the building blocks of resilience? We can look at it as what I call the two H's, which is hardiness, and I'm going to explain these in a moment, and heartiness. Now, hardiness has three dimensions to it. There's an element of control. Do we feel that we have control and influence over the circumstances of our life? Some of us feel that yes, we do. Others feel that no, we don't. And many of us are in the middle. So the extent to which you feel and you exert influence over your life circumstances contributes to your control score and therefore to your hardiness score. The second is commitment, that yes, we may be facing an adversity. It may be the pandemic, it may be cancer, it may be redundancy, it may be layoffs, it may be anything. But can we find meaning and purpose beyond that adversity or through that adversity? This is called commitment. The second C also contributes to hardiness. The third one is whether we are willing to challenge ourselves to improve the status quo after reframing, after finding that meaning and purpose. So when you look at control, commitment, and challenge, these three C's contribute to hardiness. This is coming from extremely good research, and I have quoted the research at the bottom of your slide, at least the researchers' names. But they miss out, in my view, one very important part, which I have added into the process, which I call heartiness. And what I mean by heartiness here is the fourth C. The fourth C is that of cooperation. And what I have seen, and what there is research on this, but it's not part of the same body of work on resilience, is that cooperation, which is leveraging common or collective resources, is an extremely important part of resilience. What this, in simple words, is saying is that if you're facing a big challenge, I can't be resilient alone. I need to ask and seek and receive and use the inputs that I get from others. And that is called hardiness and heartiness. So with this, keeping this in mind, I'm going to give you the chance now to actually take the resilience quiz. So let me explain how this is going to go. So it's a very quick self-assessment, which we have designed. There are 12 simple questions, and you will be able to answer them very, very quickly. They are based on the 4 C's that I just outlined. And it should take you no more than 3 minutes. In fact, I'm pretty sure that many of you will take less than 3 minutes. And here's what you have to do. Just like you copied and pasted the link of the poll everywhere into your browser, you have to go to this link, and I'm going to put up this link. I'm going to put up this link. Excuse me, just give me a second. I missed out something. I'm going to put up this link in the chat box as well. So just give me a second, please. I'm going to stop. I have to stop sharing and then go to the chat box, type in the link so that you can copy and paste it. So give me a second. Here we go. www.stresstoSwasthya.com/quiz. So please copy and paste this link into your browser. I'm going to go back to my slides. And when you put that link into your browser, you should be able to see. Sorry about that. You should be able to see a page that looks like this. And so all you have to do is just look at those questions one by one, select whether you strongly disagree, mildly agree, or strongly agree. And then after you finish your 12 statements, it'll ask you for your name and email ID, and you just hit submit. And you will instantly be able to see your resilience score. So let me just give you a couple of minutes to be able to do that. As I said, this is a general indicator, but it's an interesting way to look at your own resilience. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Somebody says they can't view the link. Is anybody else having the same problem with this link? Let me just check. stresstoSwasthya.com/resilience-quiz. Maybe there is a slash after that. Hold on. Okay. The link is working, says somebody else. I'm sorry about that, Smriti. Just try again, please. Not sure why that is happening. Sorry about that. Okay, but it is working for some others. Thank you, Susan, for confirming that. And so I'm hoping that some of you will be able to complete the 12 questions, put in your details. Yeah, thank you, Nishchal, for reposting the quiz. Thank you, Vijay, you finished the quiz. Thank you, Sumit. So for those of you who have finished the quiz, I would like you to go back to your Poll Ev tab where you did the word clouds. And let me tell you what I would like you to do there. I'm going to take you to the next one. If you go back to the Poll Ev thing, you will be able to actually see a poll where you can simply put down, now this is anonymous, so don't worry about names and revealing who you are. And I just want to see of the 70 or so people today, if you take this very quick quiz, what numbers are we seeing in terms of low resilience, moderate resilience, and high resilience? So I'm going to put it on full screen so everyone can see the scores as they are coming up. So as you finish, please go back to the POLEV tab and have a look at and select whether your resilience according to this little quiz is low, moderate, or high. Excellent. So this is a message from Samhita. Samhita, after you do the quiz, you please go back to the POLEV tab where we did the word clouds before. And in that, you will be able to see the quiz and you can put in your ratings so that you will be able to see on the screen your ratings added to the group's ratings. So right now, what I'm seeing is that about 3/4 of us on this group have moderate resilience. About 15% of us have high resilience, which is excellent. And about 8% of us have low resilience, which means that there is some work to be done in this area. Now, this is a pretty standard kind of score. Maybe 2/3 to 3/4 in the moderate resilience. I've done this now for a large variety of groups. And about 15 to 20% on low and high resilience is kind of common. So this seems like a reasonably representative group. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to lock the screen. Sorry, my PowerPoint seems to be giving some trouble today, so bear with me. Let me lock the screen, then put it on full screen, and then share my screen again. Nope, not working. Give me a second. Let me try again. Just give me a second. Okay, this should work. Let's see. This is the problem about trying to make the webinar as interactive as possible. I'm hoping you can see the screen now. And so this seems to be the score of the group, about 70% moderate resilience, 17% high resilience, 13% low resilience. Now, it may be that some of you have joined a little bit late and are a bit confused about what to do. I will share the links again. So even after the webinar, you can always go, the links are on our website. You can always go and take the quiz for yourself. So don't worry too much about it. Yeah. Okay. Now, let me go back to my PowerPoint and bring this to a close. So I just want to spend a minute or two just talking about the 4 things. There's some questions came up about what is control, what is challenge, what is commitment. So let me just answer those and then go to the Q&A very quickly. So we said that resilience has a hardiness element and it has a heartiness element. The hardiness element has control, commitment, and challenge. So let me take each one of them. What does control mean? And this is what I would like all of you to think about in your lives right now, whether it is your family life or whether it is your work life or whether it is your social life. Control means being able to answer this question: where do I have influence? And second, where am I avoiding influence? It's quite interesting that many of us don't know where we have influence and therefore don't exert it. And then there are some of us who know we have influence but are avoiding exerting that influence. So if you reflect upon these two questions, you will get a sense of how much control do you really have over your life circumstances. So this is control. When you look at commitment, again, there are two questions here for you to reflect upon. Question number one is, what is most important to me right now? Everyone's lives have been turned upside down. There's tremendous amount of turbulence. And within all that turbulence, what is important to me right now? And the second question is, where am I placing my attention and energy? Am I placing it on what is really important to me? Or am I placing it on things that were previously important to me but have now changed? Or am I placing them on what may be important to me in the future but is not yet important to me in the present? So this idea of commitment is really to see what is important and where are you placing your energy and attention. The third one, and this is challenge. I know somebody in the chat box had asked, well, what is challenge? Challenge is really about taking what is my challenge and reframing it so that I can bring about some small and significant improvement. So let's say if the lockdown is a challenge, or if getting supplies is a challenge, then how do I reframe that? What do I do? And we saw in the early word clouds, many of you were already reframing those negative challenges into some positive opportunities. And having done that, what small and significant improvement can I bring? This is the second question regarding challenge. And then when we look at commitment, of cooperation, which is the last one, which has to do with hardiness, here are the two questions. In the current situation, in the challenge that I'm facing, whose support do I need most? And who can I help and how? So cooperation obviously is a two-way process. It's not just about seeking and receiving support. It's also about giving support to people who need it. So I'm just going to go back over these 4 slides just to remind you. Bear with me. Yeah, so control, the first C, is about where do I have influence? Where am I avoiding influence? So I invite you to think about this for yourselves. Commitment is about what's most important to me now. Where am I placing my attention and energy? Please reflect on this. Challenge is about reframing whatever is going on right now in a more positive way, and then bringing some small and significant improvements which you can bring personally, actively. And cooperation is being open to seeking support from those who can support you and offering support to those who you can help right now. So this, in a way, in a nutshell, is the essence of resilience. So let me summarize everything that I have said so far. We talked about stress. We talked about how stress is multidimensional. And we talked about how you can diagnose your own stress levels. You can go to our website and take the Holistic Health Questionnaire. The second thing we talked about is burnout, which is an extreme or an acute aspect of stress, and some of the risky things that organizations have to keep in mind as we are going towards the new normal. And the third is that we talked about resilience at 3 levels: endurance, recovery, and transformation. And the components of resilience, which is hardiness and heartiness, and that is made up of the 4 C's: control, challenge, commitment, and cooperation. So with that, I want to bring the content part of this to a close. And I want to just talk about what are some of the things you can do going forward. The first is to reflect and act upon the 4C questions, which I have explained in some detail. This can actually help you build up your resilience. The second is you can take the holistic health questionnaire to diagnose your own stress levels. I've already put that up in the chat. I'm happy to put that up again. And since this is just an introductory session, if you or your organization would like to bring these concepts and tools in a more in-depth way, in a more structured way, in a more systematic way, please contact us. This is my email ID for those of you who are interested, vijay.bhatt@stress2swasthya.com. And I'll be able to tell you what are some of our products and offerings and so on that we could be potentially bringing to your organization or to your leadership teams. So with that, what I want to do is I want to open up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to the Q&A. Let's see. So there is a question here. What was the sample size of the survey, please, and where was it all conducted? So I quoted quite a few surveys. The survey which had to do with the scary stats on stress, they come from a variety of sources. One of them is an ASSOCHAM survey. One of them is a regular survey done by Apollo hospitals. And one of them is a US and Canada survey done among, I think, 600 or 700 CEOs. So that was one set of surveys. And then the second set of surveys, which I quoted, which were in the happy stats rather than in the scary stats, also come from 2 or 3 different sources. So if you would like to connect with me and understand these sources, please email me separately and I'll be able to share them with you. There is another question, which is domestic violence seems to have risen as a result of being locked down. Is this a result of increased stress? Yes, I think this is potentially one of the outcomes of increased stress as a result of the lockdown and as a result of the strange kind of dynamics that seem to have crept in that we were not used to before. So yes, the answer is it could be a result. Somebody has said, explain what is challenge. So I hope I've been able to explain it. Challenge, again, just in a nutshell, challenge is really being able to take a problem or an adversity and see it as a challenge to be addressed. So it's a question of reframing. How does one stop being a control freak? I suspect I'm causing stress in others because they can't keep up with me. How do I gauge if I'm causing stress? What a great question. I think the easiest way is to seek feedback. And I invite you to actually have the conversation with the people who you think you might be causing stress on. And if you have a decent enough relationship with them, they will have no hesitation in telling you. So that is one way to do it. Seeking feedback, I think, would be probably the most important. How do you interpret the report coming out from the 30-minute questionnaire? Well, the report itself is quite comprehensive, Pooja. But in addition, you can actually sign up for a free consultation with one of our Sherpas, one of our trained people from our team, and they will help you decode or debrief what your report is saying and clarify some of the terminology if it is confusing. So we will support you. And once you have your report, you can always email us and we can set up that conversation. No problem at all. I would like to know how to improve upon the burnout and add the fire again. Yeah, there are many things that you can be doing. Before you decide on how to improve, and I don't know who this is. This is coming from an anonymous attendee. Before you know how to improve, my suggestion would be to take the questionnaire and understand what to focus on. What to focus on. Because if you don't understand what you want to focus on, you can't actually figure out how you want to improve it, right? So I would say that let's start with the what and then go to the how. I want to understand how avoiding influence can cause stress or lack of control. Okay, so basically what we are saying here is that all of us have a degree of influence on our circumstances. Some of us try to over influence our circumstances and feel frustrated because the circumstances are too strong. Some of us don't exert the influence that we already have and feel frustrated. So when you feel as if the circumstances are outside your influence, sometimes it's because you're trying too hard, or sometimes it's because you're not trying hard enough. So that's the reason why we say that you really need to understand how much influence you have, so that you can take the necessary actions. Suva is saying, what do we do after knowing our resilience score? How do we work on the same? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot of tools and techniques and methods and so on. And so, yeah, please connect with me separately and, we can talk about what some of those solutions are. Srinivas Murthy has responded to say domestic violence is reported to increase following all disasters, and it's not specific to the current pandemic. Thank you for that. A number of Indian studies have also reported this, starting from the Bhopal disaster to the recent disaster. So thank you very much. It's a very useful input. How to ensure that people take you seriously or at least understand what you're saying, as we feel there is a huge communication gap and that adds to the stress. Yes, as we said before, the relational part of stress, the communication and the breakdown in the relationships is something to be taken very seriously. There are many answers to this. There are many tools. There are many technologies. Please do connect with us either directly or through your organization, and we will be able to help you with at least some of your questions. So I think I've answered all the questions that are in the Q&A. Let me just go through the chat and see if there's anything. I also know it's a little past 12 o'clock. So what I want to do before I do that, okay, let me complete this, since I know many of you may be wanting to leave the session. You may have other things. I'm going to launch a little poll to get your feedback. So I'm launching it now. There are only 3 questions, and it should take you literally not more than 15 or 20 seconds to answer these 3 questions. So may I request you to please answer the 3 questions about rating this webinar. How motivated are you to take some action on the concepts personally? And to what extent would you like to bring this approach and tools to your organization? Right now, I seem to have about 30 people having responded, and there are currently a little more than 50 people still on the webinar. So please take a few seconds. Your feedback is really important and really valuable to us. I will share the results with everybody so you can see how your vote stacks up with the votes of everyone else who's on the group. Keep going, please. Right now we are 37 out of 51. So I invite the other 14 to also please vote. The vote is anonymous. So please be frank and forthright. Okay, I'll wait for another maybe 15 or 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, and then I will end the polling and share the results so you can see the group's scores. Okay, here we go. So 85% or so have responded. I'm going to share the results. Here we go. So it looks like more than 90% rated this program positively, great or wow. Thank you very much for that. Really grateful to hear that. Many of you are motivated to act on this personally, almost 80%, which is excellent. I really invite you to do that. A small number have said maybe. Well, please think about it. Please reflect on it. I would urge you to take some personal actions. And about 50% of you have said you would be interested to bring this approach and these tools to your organization. So please contact me, both the individuals as well as for the organizational standpoint, and we will help you to take the next actions. So I want to stop sharing the results, go back to my close the polls, and there seem to be 11 new messages. Yeah, thank you very much to everyone for joining. I hope I've been able to share some interesting data, give you some interaction opportunities through the quiz, through the word cloud, through the Q&A. I hope that you've learned something new. I hope you will take it back. And those of you who want to talk further about this, please do email me. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now. Yeah, sharing the links here for those of you who want them.